So can I now invite, well, first Pak Hashim Djojohadikusumo. He's the CEO of ARSARI company, but also, it's not written here, he's also on several NGOs like, what I know is the Jakarta Zoo, yes, chairman, and then also the Heritage Trust, and also the environmental NGO. So, believe me, he's a private sector NGO person, almost government, but not yet. Please sit down, Pak. Okay, the next speaker is Pak Willie Smits, another special person who's almost all his life is thinking about forest restoration and RN, even in his sleep. Yeah? And so we had to really beg him, ask him, and even threaten him to make his presentation short. So let's see. Next is Pak Sarwono Kusumaatmadja. Yes, another special person because he's also a government person. He was from the Minister of Forestry, Minister of Environment, and then Minister for empowerment of civil servants, something like that. And then also he's on several civil society organizations, and he's very good in reaching private sector, community, and the government. So, Pak Sarwono, I understand we have more speaker. Faro, are you going up? Oh, great! Because I was told that you were shy when you sit down here, so it's great that you're sitting here. Thank you. Faro is from the Norwegian International Climate and Forest Initiative, and also Tim Johnson. Come up. There's Tom Jensen, yes, founder and CEO of Wake Up. So if any of you are sleeping while listening to them, they will make sure that you wake up. Okay? Without further ado, because we're late, I was planning to do some blah 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 in the beginning about sustainable development, about all the good things. But since we're late, let me ask Pak Hashim to start.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Pala. We are graced today with the presence of the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tun Abdullah Badawi, and Madam. Good morning. Welcome to our pavilion. We are also graced by the presence of His Excellency the Minister of Natural Resources and Environment, Dato Sri Wan Junaidi. Welcome. Selamat datang, Pak. Pak Rahmat Pitular, Pak Sarwono, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we're here to basically launch to the world a very remarkable plant. And around the plant, we're here to launch a new model of reforestation. A model of biodiverse reforestation, which will provide benefits for in terms of food, in terms of energy, and not least in terms of employment creation. I am a private businessman. I'm a capitalist, unashamed and a proud capitalist. I've been involved in various businesses in my career. I've been involved and participated heavily in cement, petrochemicals, oil and gas, pulp and paper, and yes, even palm oil. And yet, I, as a private businessman, would like to introduce to the world a remarkable model for development and reforestation. I've come to the conclusion that this particular model, based on what we call in Indonesia aren, pohon aren, which is the sugar palm tree, can meet the demands for food, energy, food energy security and employment, and answer the challenge of climate change, but in a commercially viable and financially profitable way. And I think this is one of the challenges of our time. Just to give a perspective of the problems that we in Indonesia face. I was told by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry 2 weeks ago that the aggregate amount of degraded forest as of this year is about 88 million hectares. 88 million hectares considered by the Ministry of Forestry and Environment as degraded. A tremendous challenge, but an enormous opportunity. An enormous opportunity for businessmen and investors who are concerned about the environment and with a passion for wildlife. Because I came to know about the remarkable properties of this plant through my passion and my love of wildlife. As a donor for wildlife causes. And a few years ago, 7 years ago, I came to meet a scientist, a naturalist, a naturalized Indonesian, who I consider now to be a friend and a comrade in arms. And a comrade in arms in the battle for the fight for climate change. I'm interested in this because of my love for wildlife, but also I believe that with this model or this method of reforestation, we can actually bridge the gap between the human needs for employment and welfare and the need to preserve, protect, and actually make wildlife thrive again in Indonesia around the world. One of the benefits of this model is that it is actually scalable in other parts of the world. And I'm very happy to see, I think, people from Africa. I hope that there are people from Latin America, because we hope, and I'm convinced that we will convince you, that Indonesia can actually contribute to the restoration of your ecosystems and provide employment for a dignified life. Employment for your people to live in a dignified life. Dr. Willie Smits will in a few minutes give his rather detailed presentation. As Ibu Erna just said earlier, he tends to get away. He tends to go away with his passion for his science. I also tend to get away, carried away. And Ibu Erna is always trying to hold me back. But in this limited time we have, and we'll have an hour for questions and answers, I think we can convince you that we can do this in Africa, we can do this in South America, we can do this in the tropical belt of this globe. That's the only caveat that we have for this project, that it has to be done in tropical countries. But there again is the opportunity for all of us. We can provide employment, enormous amounts of employment for otherwise disadvantaged people, poor people in the tropical belt. But we believe that we have the answer to the problem of carbon emission. Yesterday I was there when Professor Jeffrey Sachs talked about the need not only for limiting carbon emissions, but actually the real need for decarbonizing the planet. That is the challenge that we have. And we believe that we have the answer to this challenge. I've studied this over and over again. As a private businessman, I am convinced, after my experiences in cement and petrochemicals and oil and gas and even palm oil, that this is the one industry that I want to be in and make a lot of money. Because isn't it wonderful to do good and make money at the same time? Because I believe fervently, I believe with all my heart, that making money is not a sin. It's for how you make it and how you spend it. That is the challenge. And that's how God Almighty is going to judge us in the day of reckoning, in the day of judgment. In the meantime, do good for me to carry out my passion for wildlife, restoration of God's creation. What God has created, man is destroying, and we believe that this way we'll be able to recreate and restore God's creation. And with that, I'd like to now call on perhaps Anna to introduce Willie. And I hope you'll enjoy the presentation. I will be coming back to basically close the discussion, or close the presentation, and we'll have an hour to, I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions, because the answer, or the question that I get all the time, from the United States to Oslo, to Paris, to the UK, to all over the world is, why is it the world doesn't know about it? Why is it that we only find out now about this remarkable plant? So this is, and we're prepared to answer that question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hashim. In Indonesia, we have a saying of 3 and 1. That is the requirement you have to do when you enter the protocol street. There has to be 3 people in the car. So this is the 3 and 1 case. Simple. The best practice of sustainable development, we all know it has 3 pillars: environment, economy, and social. But we only implement it with 2 at a time, 2 in 1, either economy and environment or social and economy, not the 3 in parallel. So this is a special story with also then a special presenter, this Pavilion, who's a walking dictionary of the whole thing, the Aran and all that. So he's overflowed with knowledge. So please bear with him if he talks a bit longer, because he has all the answers.
I'm not sure if you have all the answers. Often I feel like a mosquito in a nudist camp. Where to begin? I'd like to present about why we should learn from nature, because nature knows best. It has been around for billions of years and has done all the experiments that we are only starting to look at. So I'll be talking a little bit about the importance of light, nutrients and succession, which are the key elements in rebuilding a forest the way nature does it. I'll be introducing to you the sugar palm, which I have been studying for the last 35 years. And I'm going to publish quite an extensive book on that in the coming months. And then how to apply the sugar palm and the reforestation model in a truly triple P way. So let me start with some common misconceptions. People are actually stating that the rainforests are all very sensitive, they're going to easily collapse whatever you do with it. And people are also saying that it will take hundreds of years, if not thousands, to get the forest back. And they're still claiming that forests are the lungs of the world. Maybe some of you also believe that we are producing oxygen and absorbing carbon dioxide. And people are thinking that if we replace this forest with agriculture, monoculture, then we're really efficient and bring in those big machines. Well, those are all just stories. They're not true. Because the forests are there because they are so dynamic and so adaptable. Forests can always change their composition to the local conditions. And you can grow a new forest which can do the hydrological functions and the climate regulation within 3 to 4 years. So it does not take that long. If you want to have the absolute same species composition, yes. But if you want to have a structural forest in part of the succession, you can do it. And a forest which is standing there does not produce oxygen. There are as many trees dying and rotting and emitting CO2 as CO2 is being absorbed. Otherwise you would have trees that would grow forever from the surface of the earth to the moon, which is not the case. You can only have a certain maximum amount of wood per hectare, and beyond that there's no sequestration, there's no oxygen production. But the biggest fairy tale of all is that people think that agriculture can produce more. No, forests are the most efficient energy capturing device on the planet. So, but there are serious risks also, and most of them have not to do with the forest itself, but with the practices of people. There are lots of illegal activities, there's not enough law enforcement, we do have still laws in Indonesia that allow the burning of forests, hopefully not long anymore. Climate change is also leading to a failure of the fruiting of the Meranti trees in our forests in Southeast Asia, thereby completely changing the whole composition of the forest and the animals. We are losing the bees for many years, which will not just impact the regeneration of the forest, but also reduce agricultural productivity on Bourget with 30% for the coming 2-3 years. And we are also losing the connections to the original forest and thereby losing biodiversity. So basically, the problem is humans. Oh yeah, and some money. So let's see if we really have the opportunity. Forest can provide various climate effects on microclimate, so to regenerate all the original species, regional climate. It can improve the hydrology, it can provide food, materials, medicines, all these things that we always mention so nicely, but most importantly, it can recycle nutrients. It can keep the real capital, which are the nutrients, into the system and use the output of that to produce products that we can use. And the forest can maintain the biodiversity, the treasure house of our future, where we will get the new genetic materials that we are going to be needing. So it can provide sustainable income, but it has to be done in the right way. So we have a lot of this land, millions and millions of hectares of grassland, which have completely deteriorated, no soil fertility left. We have to bring back the fertility there, and we can do that with trees. Trees are like pumps, they have roots that go deep and bring up nutrients to the structure of the tree, they combine it with the energy of the sun, and then microorganisms help to keep those nutrients in place. And only then the forest can produce the products that we humans all need, the water, the medicines and everything. We actually have those forests already in Indonesia. We have the agroforestry that has been practiced by local people, and they already know from experience that that is the most beneficial system for long-term survival. So how can we design the forest that are going to be very well adapted? So the forest composition varies a lot with the climate, with the soil, with the altitude, with the rainfall. And over time, you have changes. It's not the same forest. In the beginning, you have a pioneer 3-species forest that later becomes a primary rainforest. And the succession is really important in adapting the right species at the right moment in that regeneration cycle. The species are also influenced by the disturbances. So we have a couple of general principles how to rebuild a forest, make it multi-layered so it can capture lots of light, it always protects the soil, but there are a lot of small tricks that have to be adapted to the local conditions. So the question is now, how do we get this energy, all these values of the forest to the people, and where can we do it? Well, that's what Hashim just mentioned. It is really the tropical belt where we have year-round all that beautiful sunshine, where we have rain, where we have enough land, where we have enough people. Here in Paris, there are no leaves on the trees, nothing is producing at this moment. In the tropics, you can do it year-round. And with what? Well, we believe that the sugar palm is providing a very special answer. So let me go a little bit closer into why is this sugar palm so special? How can this palm make better use of sunlight and nutrients than other plants? And then where is the ecological resilience? Why is this plant so safe to use? And then I will go into the multiple products and the income streams that we can generate from sugar palms. So let's start with the sugar palm productivity. A lot of people bluntly state that biomass is not a solution. Yesterday we heard Professor Jeffrey Sachs saying, yeah, biomass a little bit, but it competes with food. you know, so you cannot really use it. And there's a limit. People believe that if you would use biomass in a maximum way, you could not produce more than 30% of the world's energy needs. But that is based upon this theory that we are only capable of efficiently harvesting 1% of the sunlight, which becomes biomass and then can be utilized for practical purposes. I think we should have some very serious questions with those two assumptions, because forest can provide a lot of food and energy at the same time and much more efficient than the 1% if we do not go to the agricultural methods but back to the forest and combine it with this very special tree. So if you look here at the growing of corn in the temperate zones, you can only have one production cycle, and then only in the last 6 weeks of the growing cycle, actually sunlight is converted to sugar that goes into those corn cobs that you then harvest and make into ethanol. In the tropics, we can do it year-round, so we have a little bit more. But in principle, the same thing with all these agricultural crops, like sugarcane. You grow it up, it is investing in its infrastructure, and only in the last 6 weeks there is some sugar going into that stem. Only 6 weeks of sunlight out of a whole year, which you can efficiently harvest. But if you have a sugar palm mixed forest, you have a huge biomass and a much bigger amount of biomass that you can harvest and convert to usable energy. And the good thing is, of these forests, you can grow them on steep slopes by rehabilitating land that is also benefiting the hydrology, the water, and the regional climate for agricultural production. You have an added value, so there's no competition there for the same land. The sugar palm forest is very dark. Look underneath these trees. So there are like 6 layers of leaves above every square meter, which is double that of any other vegetation type. And at the same time, those leaves can make 50% better use of sunlight than any of the other plants, because they have what the people call a C4 photosynthesis, which is a physiologically more efficient system. And the sugar palm has some very special way of growing. So in the agriculture, the crops grow up, and then at the end you harvest the product and the plant is gone. If you have the regular trees like the oil palms or the coconuts, for every new fruit they have to make a new leaf. So they have a lot of maintenance energy that has to be expended to keep that production going. But the sugar palm stops growing after it starts fruiting, and then for 12 years those very same leaves, that very same infrastructure works like a giant biophotovoltaic cell and continues to produce juice, sugar that you can harvest every day. So why can these sugar palms produce more? If you look at corn, you can only use a part of your products. But if you have a sugar palm, that same biomass can produce at least 3 times its weight in energy, because there's no storage. You directly tap the daily result of photosynthesis with that very same infrastructure. So it's like a photocell producing direct current. And if you look at plants, if you have in plants like a coconut, a lot of the sugar that is produced is then used to make this infrastructure of the nuts and the bunches for the oil palm, and then you start processing it. So you end up with only 40% of usable energy. But if we would tap the sugary juice from the coconuts, and then we have 100% of usable energy. So again, 7 times more energy can be used by shortcutting these physiological processes in the plant. And the sugar palm, you don't remove any organs. So you are actually, with the deep roots of the sugar palm, adding nutrients to the system, you're making it richer, and you don't need to replace any of the nutrients that you have to replace when you are harvesting crops. So we are just harvesting sunshine. And the trees have very deep roots that go down, not to the sides. And they never dry out. Even though the roots may be small, they leave behind carbon, which becomes like a sponge in the soil, making the water retention better, the infiltration of water better. And they have these wax layers on top of the leaves that make that they only need half the amount of water. So if you have sugar palms in the forest, you get more water out of your watershed. And I would thereby state that the sugar palm is the champion of photosynthesis. I cut out 20 slides. Do you notice, Erna? So, yeah, thank you. So next, let's have a closer look at the ecological resilience. Why is this palm also quite special for the application? I'll come back to you, Erna, don't worry. The flooding is not an issue for the sugar palm. Even after 1 year underwater, you can still tap the sugar, you can still harvest the fruits. And it's also fire resistant. Fires cannot go through a sugar palm forest, so you can use them as buffer zones to protect your other areas, while at the same time creating jobs in those buffer zones. And the sugar palm is so strong that it even survives volcanic eruptions. This is in front of my house in North Sulawesi. If you look at that place after the eruption, this is what we see. Only the sugar palm has survived the eruption of the volcano, all that sulfuric acid and the hot ash. So it's quite resilient. And then it has a symbiosis with ants. So once the trees are a bit bigger, all these ants start attacking the caterpillars that might damage the leaves or the insects. And the sugar palm also has, can you press the cursor to the right? Cursor. Tinggi saja cursor, panah ke kanan. Ya, panah. Okay, otherwise you could see the ants running around, and these spikes are protecting the shoot of the sugar palm from being attacked by beetles. Can you press the space bar? It's not moving. Okay. Yeah. If you plant sugar palms in monoculture, they do not grow well. It's maybe some of you have seen the movie Avatar, and all these little threads that are connecting the trees. That is how nature works. Mr. Cameron really did a good job. The plants have to help each other to protect against diseases and distribute sugar. So here we planted sugar palms at different distances of the tree. Only the ones close to trees grow well. So they must be planted in a biodiverse forest. But they can still grow in very heavy shade. And whenever light becomes available, they can make use of that light. So it has huge CO2 benefits. The food security. Imagine if you have 1 hectare of mixed sugar palm forest, a village of 500 people would be able to survive for 7 months on the calories in that forest. So you also create food security, especially in times of climate change. You can increase the resilience. And at the jobs, the tapping is manual. You can tap them. And every day you just slice off twice 1 millimeter of material. That's all that you harvest, 1 millimeter of that flower stem. And then the wound starts bleeding again, and then you can tap the juice. And it's like opening a tap. There's a constant stream of drinking water and energy, sugar, coming out. Some of the trees that I've measured produce more than 100 liters of juice from a single tree every day for a half-year period. But on average, having about 1.5 liter of gasoline replacement, meaning that one tree can provide all the energy that one car needs to run on average, is not a bad deal. So we can actually produce a lot. And the sugar palm has 65 different products. The top 3 are the ones that we have included in our business model, but there are so many others as well. So it provides resilience. And these forests, even these young ones on a slope of 80 degrees, can protect the watershed, and it can help the farmers nearby as well. So the tree is basically harvesting sunlight, rainwater, and CO2. So Hashim and me are in the business of selling air. That's a great business. And we keep all the richness, the capital, the nutrients, we keep in our own location. So it seems like a good deal. And the sugar is actually a storable chemical battery, because the honey in the grave of Tutankhamun, after 2,000 years, it still tastes like honey. If you add some water, boom, you have ethanol, you have your energy. So you have a chemical battery. You don't need all those expensive photovoltaic devices anymore. With sugar, you have the world. With sugar, you can build almost any component in jet fuel. And the production. Yeah, if we look at the productivity of the sugar palm in biodiesel equivalent, because we normally